Okay, let's get into a couple of news items. The first thing is that the WNBA Finals has wrapped up. The New York Liberty win one of the nastiest games I have ever seen. They won 67-62 in overtime in Game 5 versus the Minnesota Lynx. Stewie and Sabrina combined to go 5 of 34 in that game, and Sabrina in particular, I think, dodged some generational slander for their poor shooting. But I thought that both of them defended their asses off in that game. Swipa, did you catch the conclusion, the finale to the WNBA Finals?
Yeah, I think that was a very interesting game. I think that it was a lot of high-level defense between the two teams.
Yeah, both teams for sure.
Yeah, I think Fee, I think she lodged herself in some people's brain as the best player in the world. I obviously think it's Asia, but she played spectacular. I think Sabrina has too much Kobe aura, I think, for her people to really slander her. They would just say she gave great heart, so.
Well, you didn't see my timeline of Liberty fans. We're like, don't give her any champagne.
Jeez. Even the Liberty fans, huh?
Wow. I mean, it was an interesting series. I'll say it like that. I think it was an all-time rant at the end of it, obviously from the Lynx head coach. But
yeah, actually, Will, if you could bring that picture back up again. This is from the Liberty Parade in New York. A fan had a sign up there. Cheryl Reeve is a fucking loser, is what the sign says. Oh, but yeah, parentheses respectfully. So, they got the respectfully in there. It was a crazy series. The Liberty pulled it off, regardless of any official, all these games were incredibly close and there was stuff on both sides. But I thought it was really fun. It was really cool, I think, to see the entire time. I think the timing was perfect, is right before the regular season starts. So my NBA kind of tab, that timeline was all locked in on these games as well. The ones who weren't baseball fans, of course, because
there is a great baseball playoff going on right now.
The playoffs are happening.
And basically the two biggest franchises in the sport are playing in the World Series. So
right. We have New York versus LA.
Big market, yeah.
Is that the NBA dream right there? Would that be the Knicks LA, or would it be Boston LA?
It's probably Boston, LA, because frankly, the Boston fan base is so just dedicated.
Well, the franchise is hugely successful, obviously. Yeah. But I think the Knicks would still bring in huge numbers.
Right. I think you'd get big numbers. But I think there are so many Boston fans all over the country. I don't know that there's a ton of New York sports fans all over the country. But
yeah, there are. New York still has the largest market, which makes no sense because all their teams are mid, except for the Knicks right now. Well, the Mets, respectfully, the Mets and the Yankees, but the Giants are mid. They're bad. The Jets are bad. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. I think being in a big market, there's things you get the benefit from that I've never known because I've been, Denver, Colorado. So there's just the amount of attention you get every year for absolutely nothing. Or if you don't play in an Olympic tournament, then everybody's like, it's a comeback year. You got a fire behind your engine. It's like, bro, they won the gold, and all of a sudden, Olympics and not playing is motivation for the regular season.
Right.
You're already making $300 million. You just won a title. I don't know what other motivation you need. But because he's a Celtic, he got to be at the top of the league anyway.
Yeah. Well, congratulations to the New York Liberty on that. And congratulations to the WNBA for attracting all these fans. Actually, one more note on that that I forgot, and it's actually really big news, is that the WNBA Players Association is opting out of their current CBA. They have an opt-out clause. I expect negotiations to be underway between the Players Association and the league over the next year. They do have a deadline of around this time next year to get that done so that there isn't a lockout.
Yeah.
And I will just say that one of the major demands of the Players Association is to have more set at all, really, revenue sharing in the style of the NBA, where the players get a certain cut of the league revenue. I don't know what that cut is going to be. I wonder how much they're going to ask for in the NBA, in case anybody is curious, because I'm the resident CBA nerd here, the players get 51% of basketball-related income, they call it.
Yes.
In various forms. So it's kind of like a thing where if teams aren't spending enough money on player salaries, then the league has to find other ways to make sure that the rest of that money, that is that 51% cut of all the league basketball-related income, gets to the players. That is not the case in the WNBA.
Support this, Grace. So according to CNN, according to the WNBPA, ESPN's regular season viewership shot up 170%. CBS Sports 86% jump, and attendance reached a 22-year high of 48%. So literally, the timing could not have been better for a new CBA agreement to be established, especially given the influx of recent NBA talent. But don't you worry, this time next year, and then about 2 years after that, when there's a USC prospect that comes out as well, this might
Juju Watkins?
Yes, 1,000%. Yeah. This might be the most profitable next 4-year run the WNBA has ever been on. Well, it should be because of inflation and just the way things are increasing. But just on a yearly per year bounce, they're going to get generational talent in the next several drafts. So that includes Flo that's getting ready to come out. Obviously, UConn, I mean, they're going to get Paige in the league. She's going to be a superstar right away.
Paige, is that Paige?
Paige Beckers.
Yeah.
Okay.
She's from Connecticut, and she tore ACL. She was a college player of the year, tore ACL, came back, and was still dominant. But then Juju, who legitimately can break Caitlin Clark's scoring record. So, I mean, I've never seen talent this good in WNBA. And just to give people context, I loved the WNBA when it first started. I was a huge Cheryl Swoops fan. I mean, if you just know anything about women's basketball as a whole, like Maya Moore, like what she did for just even my generation, how good she was, winning all those championships. Candace Parker, I remember watching her playing McDonald's All-American dunk contest and winning and all that stuff. Like, there have been some real talent, but this, like where we are right now, I think the WNBA is headed to a place it's never been.
In terms of the depth of talent, yeah.
Yes. Courtney Vandersloot is legitimately like a very good player, and she's a role player. You know what I mean? Like there's just
off the bench.
Right. Yeah. Like there's just so much talent in that league.
The one of the things that is so the people have been pointing out that's been so different about the WNBA compared to the NBA is the fan bases that some of the top stars bring along with them to the WNBA because they stay in college longer than most NBA players.
Yeah.
Lots of one and dones in the NBA. That might change now with some of the things we talked about earlier in the summer with changes to NIL and you know, coming at the same time as changes in the CBA that make it maybe more advantageous for some guys to stay longer to try to, you know, improve their draft stock. But in the WNBA, I believe it's a requirement.
It's required. You have to stay.
Is it a 4-year requirement?
Yeah, I believe it's a 4-year requirement.
So in that time, they're able to accumulate these, you know, very dedicated fan bases because there's no dedication to a sports team like a college sports team. And so you see that certainly with Caitlin Clark in this season. And I think putting that in concert with these rising talents that are going to be coming
into the league.
Did y'all
think that Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese, did y'all think they were going to that level of superstardom and like and hype coming from collegiate to WNBA like they did?
No.
I think when there was storylines about them like in the NCAA tournament, I assumed there would be some fireworks going on, but I didn't want it to be as toxic as the discourse was. But
I mean, Caitlin Clark was bringing like sellout audiences to franchises that struggle to fill seats,
right?
Like normally, just when the Fever played, even when they were bad to start the season, right?
Right.
And then the whole like the thing that kind of made it pop for me was like seeing people outside of my basketball timelines talking about them, and I was like, oh wow, this is actually big.
Yeah, it became a social phenomenon,
for better or worse.
Well, I think I think this all it did, and whenever things happen in society, what I think, especially in sports, all it does is illuminate the positives, negatives, and the toxicity and the places of growth within, I think, the public forum. And I think that like when you have two top tier athletes go into especially women's sports, which is if anybody understands, women's sports has always had this little bit of a misogynistic tone to it to some degree, just because of the way people view women's sports. Like, oh, well, they can't dunk, they can't do this and that, which is weird because, like, if you just follow track and field, like, track and field is just way different, because I think when you watch, like, them win and them run, like FloJo, and just the history of, like, women's sport, it's just like they're dominant athletes. You see it. I think basketball, because of the way the game is perceived and how femininity is talked about, how racism is talked about, we were so unprepared for this white woman from Iowa, and then this black woman from LSU to, like, tee off national stage, and then to go into the WNBA for Chicago and Indiana. You know what I mean? Like, just two massively different. In Indy, it's obviously like a very, like, urban progressive city and stuff like that. There's a lot to it as well, but just the dichotomy that existed between the two. And so I think even some of the player pushback from black athletes and WNBA black athletes was like, Caitlin has to earn her keep, which, as you all probably are aware, when you're white and you walk into a predominantly black sport, there are certain things that you have to work through on one end. Like, you have to prove yourself to a degree, but also you get a little bit of due that can be undeserved at times. So, like, you have to kind of prove yourself in that. That goes back to a long history of just athletics, and especially in the space of basketball. But then
we're always talking about how, like, just to contrast that, if you are, like, a moderately positive impact white boy role player for the Lakers,
right?
You get a lot of praise.
The white boy juice.
You get all-star votes.
Right, yeah. Austin Reeves, Alex Caruso, now Dalton Connett's going to be an automatic 40 points per game player or something.
Right.
Yeah, there you go.
And that's not to say that that's what Caitlin is, especially what she was able to evolve into by the end of the season.
First team WNBA, it's a rook.
I think she earned that.
No, it was just, she was exceptional. Like, she was. Relative to what you could expect. Yeah, like for the last half of the season, she was basically putting up like 24 and 10, like in 7, you know what I mean? Like, and carrying a load. Now, Leah Boston and them are really good. Mitchell's really good. They have a really nice roster on their team. Don't want to, like, downplay that at all, but Caitlin was as good as advertised. But, like, I'm telling y'all, when Paige walk into the league, everybody going to be, I'm telling you, when you watch her as a freshman, Grace, coming to UConn was a dog. I'm telling you, I can't wait to watch her in the WNBA.
She used to date Jalen Suggs, Grace.
Paige Buchers? Mm-hmm. Oh, but they broke up. So do I hate her now? I need to know.
I'm sure it was mutual. I'm sure it was, Suggs is an NBA player. She got her own thing, so,
Love the WNBA talk. Very excited to continue, following that league into next season. I'm interested to see how the negotiations go with this new CBA, because it's gonna impact a lot. Because one of the things that we talked about in the past is, the difference in the gap in pay between the WNBA and its international counterparts versus the NBA and its international counterparts, and how they might be able to attract more international talent as well, depending on how this goes. Since we're talking about money, great segue. I'm going to give myself a pat on the back there. Let's talk about all the big extensions that happened earlier this week, because it seems like everybody and their mother got extended, including AG. Mm-hmm. So the Nuggets were able to extend Aaron Gordon at 4 years, $133 million. The way that this worked out, and either of you can ask me any more specific questions about this after I lay it out, is that AG was able to opt in to his player option for next year, which is a big deal for the Nuggets and their cap flexibility for next season. Then gets a 3-year quote-unquote max extension after that. And I say quote-unquote max because AG's maximum is not the veteran maximum like Jamal got, which is like 30% of the cap. It's not the super max that that Jokic is on. It's 35% of the cap. It's not the at the time rookie skill max extension that MPJ got, that at the time was 25% of the cap, and it's less of the cap now. And for that, I think that for the fact that he opted into his player option, I thought it was a really big deal. So what was your reaction to that, Swipa?
About time. I think Aaron Gordon earned that. And, I remember the first time he got paid, it was the 4-year in 92. A lot of outside of the Nuggets kind of spear said it was like an overpaid contract. He wasn't going to live up to it. It wasn't worth it, but he ended up being obviously well worth more than that. Aaron Gordon at 33 mil, like being paid like 17 mil, basically like in the totality of the deal, under what he could have made. And then relative to like OG Anunoby, who I think he's in a similar tier in like what he could be making. I think for AG to do that speaks to AG. I think it speaks to the culture that the Nuggets have built. I think it speaks to the players that the Nuggets have that, he would feel comfortable doing that. And I think it speaks to his leadership, as a whole. So I was very glad to see it. The Nuggets need Aaron Gordon. They really need all the members of their core four, especially, and given the job that AG has to do. I mean, guard LeBron, guard Book, guard KD, guard Jimmy Butler, guard Anthony Edwards, guard Karl Towns. Like, you're just not going to. Jalen Williams, like, Jalen Brunson if he had to, Tatum if he had to, Brown if he had to. Like, he just is one of the most unique players in the sport. So I think that that was a much deserved, and I was glad that they were able to get that done.
Yeah, I immediately thought of how team focused it was, him opting in. And I mean, I'm sure the players, they've heard enough CBA talk to know how this is going to work and how operating around the margins, how difficult that's going to be roster-wise and with the salary. So, but it was like a win-win, and that's what he said when he was asked about it, like just looking for a win-win for both sides. And I think it was like a lot of his salary is going to be now backloaded on those additional years, but we have rightfully more room than we have now to hopefully use some stuff like next season and whatnot to keep competing when these guys are really in their prime. So, it's not like it's going to be easy, but it's at least easier.
It's going to be a little less difficult, let's say. Mm-hmm. I will say the 2026 to 2027 offseason preceding that is a little bit of a ticking time bomb now, because basically what they did with this deal was kick the can down the road on the decision on whether to enter the second apron or not on this core. But they're going to be able to stay under it, which is a really big deal because of the way that the penalties compound for more years over the second apron. But for this season and next, the core is locked in. Let's go get a ring, man. Like, another one.
I think it's fascinating to me that the NBA has built in an infrastructure that basically doesn't reward proper team building. But also, this was ultimately about the owners not having to shell out as much money as they were projected to. And so it puts a cap on the other leagues or the other owners to say, oh, well, you can't spend this, so I won't spend this. And I just think
they all voted for it.
They did.
So no one's off the hook.
Right. But I just think it's funny that, like, it's, how do we put a cap on, where exactly we'll go? Then if you do this, then you're going to have to willing, like, the Celtics are $400 million down the road. And then that's wild, to think that you would have to put a roster together and make those kind of decisions. I just think it's all backwards. I just think it just doesn't make any sense. Like, the incentive should be to make the best team possible. And if anything, you should be rewarded for that as opposed to penalized for that. But thus, market economy.
Well, nobody likes Joe Lacob and his Chase Center and all of that. And it's funny because, like, the Warriors were already on the downswing by the time this thing came along.
Right.
It's brutal.
There were a couple of other notable rookie extensions, and you mentioned AG kind of, and the players in general kind of looking around and what the cap space situation would look like next summer. And we saw a lot of teams that could be potential cap space teams next summer end up going through with some rookie extensions, including a couple that surprised me. We had Trey Murphy get 4 for $112 million, so that's around $28 million a year starting next season. So that was with the Pelicans. I thought that was a really good deal for the Pelicans, frankly. Even though Trey is not a starter, that has nothing to do with him. That's like, that roster makes no sense. Moses Moody, 3 years, $39 million, so $13 million a year. I've kind of brought in a couple of these comps that I have for Christian Brown in terms of, like, maybe player archetype and kind of player, like quality, like the kind of player that he's going to be. And I think Moses Moody is another one. So I was looking at this number, thinking about it, because, next year the Nuggets might potentially decide, to not go into restricted free agency with Christian and perform a similar type of extension. And so I'm just kind of trying to project out what that number could be. So I think it might be similar to what Moses Moody gets here. We talked about Jalen Suggs. 5 years, $150 million. So that's obviously $30 million a year. He made all defense, and he's only 23 years old, guys. I saw a lot of people have some consternation about this number on the timeline, but this was always going to be the number. I talked about this with Dan Favale at the beginning of the season, that I thought they should just max him because his player comp right now is Derek White. Derek White is 7-8 years older than him, making this money. I think that Jalen Suggs is actually a better defender than Derek White. Obviously, Derek White's a better offensive player right now. But Jalen Suggs is also, because this is the position they put him in, the starting point guard for a team that, made the playoffs for the first time in a while last year. So, yeah, I'm curious, what do you think about the Jalen Suggs number?
I think it's perfectly reasonable. I didn't even bat an eye. I think it's completely worth it.
Because this isn't star money, right? This is
no
high-end role player money.
It's a function of his role. It's also a function of the fact that he is so young. It's a function of the fact that he's making such a dramatic increase. He was not projected to be this kind of defender walking into the league. And then he has turned himself into a tier 1 defender. And you do not find those often. So if you can lock them down, manageable contract, manageable money, and then just imagine as he gets more mature in his game, he figures out his offensive game, he becomes a better playmaker, he becomes a better scorer. And even in the last 35 games of the year or so last year when he started to figure things out offensively, he showed to be a different player. So for me, that's eating money. I mean, that's nothing. I would much rather give that. Now I have a solidified core of him, Franz, and Paolo. And then Jonathan Isaac on that as well. And then everything else around that is just, how can we maximize all the players around there? And I think working with KCP, I think it's going to work really well as well. So I think Jalen deserved it. And I think that, I think he can be a special dude. And also he might be the best quarterback, by the way, inside the NBA, if you keep up with his background at all. I mean, he was incredible.
And then there was Jalen Johnson, who I thought was a steal because he got Jalen Suggs money. 5 years, $150 million from the Atlanta Hawks.
He can be an all-star in 2 years.
Right.
Yeah, he's crazy. He's huge, too. He's bigger than you realize.
I mean, they're playing him at power forward, right?
But him, Reese, Trae Young, they're going to be sneaky good this year in ways because Trae Young being flanked by, 2 legitimate play finishers and just Zachary just adds any playmaking at all. I think they're going to be good as in competitive and all that. So, I don't know. I like what Atlanta's building, man. I know people aren't super high on Trae, but
it's funny. We just talked about this on our last show. Atlanta was my team that I think is going to be worse than people think this year. And I like Jalen Johnson a lot. He did have some issues staying healthy last year, was kind of in and out of the rotation. He missed a big chunk with I believe it was an ankle injury, and then he was kind of in and out. After that, just trying to work himself back into the rotation. Atlanta had all kinds of problems last year, though.
I think I had Atlanta my power rankings 21st going into the year. So right in front of the Raptors, behind the Warriors.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds about right. Okay, but the 2 extensions that really surprised me were the Jalen Green and Alperen Sengun extensions. It was more surprising because of the order in which they came. Not that it really matters now. Both have happened. Jalen Green was extended for, it was 3 years, $30 million a year.
30, yeah.
And with a player option on the 3rd year, which is interesting. And then Sengun, I believe, was 5 years. I actually didn't write this number down. It was 5 years, 118 million. Yeah, I was like, did I recall that right? I thought that was a total steal. So Sengun ends up with a player option on the end of that deal. The reason that it was surprising is that everybody had basically been speculating that the Houston Rockets
185. By the way, Sengun
was
185.
That 185. Okay, thank you. That makes more sense because I believe it was $37 million a year. I think the reason that the Sengun deal didn't happen sooner in the year, like some of the other like big money rookie scale extensions that happened for the star level players, the Evan Mobleys, the Franz Wagners, Cade Cunninghams, who were like their franchise players, is because they weren't going to give Sengun that money this summer. But I thought that he was going to get that money eventually, right? I thought the plan. I thought the plan was to wait until next year and give him his full max.
Yeah, that's tough, man. Because I like Sengun, but Cade got 224. He's obviously the primary everything in Detroit. They're terrible. He has no help whatsoever. Scotty's an all-star. I mean, Franz I think can be an all-star. And then the fourth one, there's another one that got 224. Evan Mobley. Evan is Evan Mobley. So I think Sengun can be an all-star in the next couple of years. Do you think does he get higher than where Domantas Sabonis is right now?
I already think that Sengun is better than Sabonis.
Oh, man. Wow.
And I'll tell you why.
Sabonis gets no respect in the streets.
No, that's not true. I definitely have a lot of respect for Domantas Sabonis. I think that Sengun is a better playoff player than Sabonis for a couple of different reasons.
We haven't seen Sengun in the playoffs.
We haven't, but we have seen Sabonis in the playoffs.
He played versus Draymond and Looney.
I know. He played versus Draymond and Looney and got bodied by two undersized centers.
I think Sengun can be better for sure. I think Sabonis, that run that they had, everybody kind of still holds that against him a little bit, but just in a regular season context, I mean, he's like he's 19, 12, and 8 on good efficiency and all that. He's a better anyway, I think that Sengun can get there. I wouldn't have been surprised if he got 224, but I knew Jalen Green wasn't getting that. I can tell you that much.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I was surprised that one happened at all.
Yeah. Do you think he they have Amen and Reed and Cam Whitmore. That's a lot. I don't know. Like Jalen Green just doesn't feel like he's in the future in some ways for the Rockets, but he could, obviously he's a good player and all that stuff. But I'm big on Reed Shepherd and I'm big on like Amen Thompson. I think they could be like the future.
Oh, they have so much freaking young talent on that team. All right, let's talk about Will's favorite team, the Golden State Warriors, because they decided not to extend Jonathan Kuminga. The rumor has it that Kuminga wants his full max. Now, Swipa, the question I have for you is that if Golden State didn't want to put Kuminga in trade for talks, reportedly, and they also don't want to pay him like a budding star, what are they doing? What
are we doing? I'm hearing on the word on the rumor mill is that Podziemski was the reason why they didn't trade for somebody like Lauri Markkanen. I'm 100%. Why are we holding on to these young players? And we're trying to build around Steph going into like age 36 season this year and saying, oh yeah, we're going to put a contender out there for you, Steph, with Buddy Hield.
Or like, I wonder if the Clippers wanted Podziemski in the Paul George talks.
Yeah, which I would have also been fine with if, again, the goal is to build around Steph.
Right.
Like
right.
They're playing this in between game where Steph needs to go, or maybe Steph just wants to, live out the rest of his NBA career in middling team, and I'll enjoy being in Golden State. I'll get my statue at some point, and then you can just write it out. Maybe that's what it is, but the division doesn't make sense. So no, I think if you're going to keep Jonathan Kuminga, but he's also not worth a max. So I think this is like the Warriors proving to Jonathan, you're not a max player, and then Jonathan trying to prove to the Warriors, I am a max player. And I don't think he's worth more than Sengun. It's not even a conversation for me.
But that's why I'm like, well, why was he? This was the thing at the trade deadline. They didn't want to put Kuminga in talks, and then at the summertime, it was Podziemski. So I don't know what Golden State is actually trying to do over there. Besides, I mean, I like the moves that they made this offseason just in terms of like keeping their team like relatively competent, but that's not really building around stuff.
No, I mean Anthony Melton, Buddy Hield, and then so they're going to start like Andrew Wiggins, maybe Trace, Draymond. Yeah, I mean they're going to be the same thing they always been, like very tough out in the play-in.
Yeah,
maybe.
In the play-in, and on a night-to-night basis, like they're just a pain in the ass to play just because of their play style. Mm-hmm. Over half the audience who are not subscribed, so please hit that subscribe button, hit the like button. Please remember to share and hit the notification bell as well. And always remember that winning is fun, and as Michael Malone said it, losing sucks.